Hello, my friends, and welcome to the channel. I am Nicole, and I live in India. And tonight I'm here with my very good and only friend, Laurence.
Hello.
She's regretting her friend choices right now, I can tell. Yeah. So sometimes, she has other friends.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I know. You should apologize more often.
Yeah.
I know. Okay.
Quite a lot, actually.
Quite a lot?
Yeah. Apologizing.
Apologizing?
Yeah,
today, yes, there has been today. You've not been a very good friend.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Just putting that out there. Things are happening here, people, that you have no idea in the background.
Tension.
There's tension, people. She didn't invite me for dinner yesterday or for a movie.
I'm sorry.
How dare you? I'm telling everybody. Okay, so people, we're here today and we're going to watch together Another Thing School. This is really, I really enjoyed the one that he did on Trump. It was really well put together. Very well explained and described. This Ganesh Prasad does a great job. So we're going to go ahead and watch another one of his that he put out a couple of weeks ago, which is Why is India Not a Nuclear Superpower? Now, we did try to do some research. Actually, she did. I don't do research.
No, because I knew that India had nuclear power. So I was just wondering
why we're not
what
nuclear superpower.
What the title meant, basically.
Yeah, I think it's based more on like what America would consider a nuclear superpower.
No, I think it all. Let's see. But for
possible?
What I checked,
is it like because of like the weapons verus power type situation?
It's the decision that I might be ahead of myself, whatever you say. But I think it's about the fact that India's decided not to use nuclear power as a threat.
Whereas Americans, we have no problem doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because we're American.
French too, but yeah. I think that's what it is. Let's see.
Okay, well, let's see. We don't know. We don't watch these in advance, and I don't do research. She does some more than me.
Only when I'm surprised.
Only when you're surprised.
Yeah.
All right, so people, here we are. If you haven't already, give me your like, give me your subscribe, and let's go.
Stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
The year is 1947 and India had just gotten independence. And while we were taking our first breath of freedom, on the other side, the world had just witnessed the most horrific war in world history.
4 years of bloody hell.
Hitler has committed a crime not only against Poland, but against the whole human race.
An estimated 6 million Jews were killed during World War II.
World War II was fought on 6 of the 7 continents. 50 million people perished.
It's the largest land invasion in history.
And the event that shook the world was when the United States of America put an end to World War II by dropping 2 nuclear bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima.
The temperature at the center of the bomb reached 120 million degrees. 70,000 people are killed. The war ended, but not the dying.
And the entire world was shocked to see how these 2 nuclear bombs turned 2 entire cities to dust within just a few minutes. And the effects of radiation were so devastating that they astounded the most powerful nations in the world. That day, every single leader in the world realized that if mankind comes to an end, nuclear weapons will be the reason for it. But you know what? While the entire world saw nuclear bombs as weapons of mass destruction, one man saw it as an opportunity. This man wasn't an American or a Russian, he was an Indian who went by the name Homi Jahangir Baba.
It shows the absolute necessity of finding some new source of energy if the light of our civilization is not to be extinguished because we have burnt out our fuel reserve.
To those who made wry remarks about a cow-dung economy, wishing to go in for nuclear energy.
Long before this assessment was made, Dr. Bhabha had visualized a nuclear power program for India.
Today, 8.5 years after the institute was founded, because the real thing that matters is the work that is done.
So he played a very leading role in the development of science policy in India.
Have you ever heard of this man? No, neither have I. And it seems that he has really shaped policy here and maybe even globally. So interesting.
Now, like I said, this was a time when India had just got independence and we were such a poor country that 80% of our population was living in poverty. We were struggling for food and energy, and the entire world looked down on us as a hopeless nation. And one of the biggest challenges we had was the energy problem, and we practically needed a miracle to recover from the destruction of British Raj. And this miracle is what Homi Bhabha saw. He knew that even though nuclear bombs were dangerous, the process behind nuclear bombs was the miracle that India desperately needed. Because Homi Bhabha knew the power of nuclear energy. Look at this. This 1-inch tall uranium pellet can release so much energy that it is equivalent to 1 ton of coal, 564 liters of oil, and about 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas. And Homi Bhabha knew that nuclear energy could make India independent from the import of coal and oil. He knew that it would position India as a global leader in science and technology. And most importantly, Homi Bhabha knew that if India had to become a developed nation, India needed nuclear energy. And today, in the 21st century, nuclear power is even more important because it is by far the cleanest source of energy. You don't believe me? Look at this table. While coal produces 970 tons of greenhouse gas emissions per gigawatt hour of electricity, oil produces 720 tons, solar produces 53 tons, wind produces 11 tons, whereas nuclear only produces 6 tons of greenhouse gas emissions per gigawatt hour of electricity. So to Homi Bhabha, nuclear power wasn't just an option, it was an absolute necessity. But in spite of the vision and ambition of Homi Bhabha, fast forward to today, we are so far behind in nuclear energy that as of 2020, while France produced 70% of its energy needs from nuclear, Russia produced 20.6%, Pakistan produced 7.1%, whereas India only produced 3.3% of its energy from nuclear. It hurts, right? But the question is, why are we so far behind in nuclear energy? When zero emissions is such a big deal, why are we still so behind in nuclear development? Well, that is because, ladies and gentlemen, just when Homi Bhabha was about to achieve a breakthrough in India's nuclear mission, Homi Bhabha died due to mysterious circumstances. And just 13 days before Homi Bhabha, our Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri had died in mysterious circumstances, and that too in the Soviet Union when he had gone to talk peace with Pakistan.
Lal Bahadur Shastri lay in state.
Mr. Shastri died in Tashkent, Soviet Central Asia.
The man who led India to victory in the 1965 war against Pakistan.
Dr. Homi Jahangir Bhabha, father of India's atomic energy program.
An untimely death.
ये विमान दुर्घटना एक अंतर्राष्ट्रीय साजिश थी.
He dreamt of creating a nuclear bomb for India.
And you know what, guys? Both these leaders were about to achieve a breakthrough in India's nuclear program, and both died in mysterious circumstances within just a 2-week span. While there was no post-mortem done for Shastriji, Homi Bhabha's plane crash was left with incomplete investigation. So the question is, what exactly was Bhabha's nuclear secret that could have changed India's history forever? Why has India fallen so far behind today? What are the challenges that are paralyzing our growth in nuclear energy today? And most importantly, where does India's nuclear energy program stand today? This is a story that dates back to 1947, and India back then was in such a sensitive state that we needed energy independence in order to run our country smoothly. So we either had to generate energy or we had to buy it from other countries. But when it came to buying energy, it was a very, very risky move back then because the World War had just ended and the entire world saw how energy could be weaponized. So if we bought oil from Saudi Arabia, the world was so sensitive that India was always scared that one day or the other, Saudi Arabia might just cut off oil supply and choke India's economy. In fact, in the 1940s, the entire Middle East was controlled by the British and American oil companies. So the leaders of India were very scared to be dependent on Western powers again. And to make matters worse, we immediately got into a war with Pakistan in 1948 itself. This is where two legends of India came together, Homi Jahangir Baba and Jahangir Ratanji Tata, or J.R.D. Tata. Both these gentlemen saw the need for advanced scientific research institutes in India. So with J.R.D. Tata's help, Homi Baba set up the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, or TIFR.
He made a proposal to the Sir Dorabji Tata Trust, envisioning a new institute, a place where talented scientists would have the scope to realize their potential.
JRD's reply was encouraging. If you and or some of your colleagues in the scientific world will put up a concrete proposals backed by a sound case, I think that there is a very good chance that the Sir Dorab Tata Trust will respond.
And they realized that nuclear is the best energy to pursue because it's clean, it's super efficient, and the best part is, unlike wind and solar, you don't have to wait for the perfect weather to operate a nuclear plant. But while Homi Baba was struggling with approvals and government permissions, there was a looming threat of another world war. Because all the powerful nations in the world were conducting nuclear tests one after the other. The US did it in 1945, Soviet Union did it in 1949, UK did it in 1952, France did it in 1960, and by 1964, even China had a nuclear bomb.
The first test of the atomic bomb in the New Mexico desert.
Startling headlines flood the American press following news of the atom explosion within the borders of the Soviet Union.
1952, Britain began an era of nuclear testing.
To Dr. Penny and his team, great credit is due for this mighty British achievement.
Deep in the Sahara, France goes forward with the detonation of her first atomic bomb.
At 3 p.m. on October the 16th, 1964, China exploded its first atomic bomb.
The shattering overture to a new era in man's history.
So India desperately needed a nuclear strategy. But the question is, where does this nuclear energy come from? Well, it comes from a very important element called uranium. And here's where you need to understand a little bit of science as to how is nuclear energy produced. You see, this is your uranium atom, which is made up of protons and neutrons. There are 92 protons and 143 neutrons in a uranium atom. And in a nuclear energy reactor, what happens is that a tiny neutron is thrown at a uranium atom, and this uranium-235 atom, it absorbs a neutron. And this makes the nucleus extremely unstable, and it splits into two smaller nuclei. This splitting releases a huge amount of energy, and we use this energy to heat water, which is turned into steam, which then spins a turbine. And when the turbine spins, we get electricity. Almost all countries use this process, which is done in something called a light water reactor. But you know what? Even with uranium, there was one big problem. Homi Baba understood that even for uranium reactors, we had to import uranium from other countries because India only had world's 1 to 2% of uranium, and we needed to use something that was readily available in India itself. So you know what? Homi Baba realized that a precious fuel source was lying in our beaches, in our sands, and this magic material is called thorium. For those who don't know, thorium is again another element which is silvery, slightly radioactive, and which is even more cleaner and more energy efficient than uranium. And the best part is that India has one of the world's largest reserves of thorium. In fact, we have 25% of the entire world's thorium. Look at this chart. Millions of tons of monazite sand is even today found in the coastal regions of Odisha, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Jharkhand. So Homi Baba knew that thorium was a life-changing resource for India. But the problem was that no other country had used thorium before, so there was no blueprint on how to use thorium to produce nuclear energy. So here's where Homi Baba came up with a unique 3-step nuclear program as a way to develop nuclear energy by using this thorium. Now again, this is a little technical, but then stay with me. In this 3-step process, stage number 1 was to use uranium in reactors to produce electricity and generate plutonium as a byproduct. In stage 2, this plutonium is used to generate a lot of electricity and produce more plutonium from uranium. Secondly, they start producing uranium-233 from thorium itself. And then in stage 3, thorium is used along with uranium-233 produced in stage 2 to produce even more energy. And for all these 3 stages, we needed different types of reactors. And more importantly, back then, All these stages required extensive research and development. And if completed, it would have turned India into an energy superpower. And Homi Bhabha achieved such quick success that in 1956, India got its first light water reactor called Apsara, and we built 2 more by 1961. But this is when the India-China war broke out in 1962, and then the Indo-Pakistan war started in 1965.
On October the 20th, 1962, the first Chinese shells came screaming down, and the war had begun.
The Chinese army launched a massive attack on India, both in Ladakh and in the northeast.
It was this opportunism that led to the India-Pakistan War of 1965.
By April, the armies of India and Pakistan were involved in a full battle.
So obviously there was shortage of resources and the research got slowed down. But you know what? During the Indo-China war, Homi Bhabha understood that unless India has a nuclear bomb, these nations will keep on attacking us. In fact, on 4th of October 1964, which was just 2 weeks before the first Chinese nuclear weapon test, Homi Bhabha declared that India could make an atomic bomb within just 18 months of a decision to do so. So did we make the nuclear bomb? Well, not really. This was when Jawaharlal Nehru ji passed away and Lal Bahadur Shastri ji became the Prime Minister of India. And Dr. Homi told Shastri ji that it was absolutely important that we start conducting our tests as soon as possible. And you know what? Even though Shastri ji was hesitant, he gave the green light for India's nuclear defense program in 1965. But just when we were about to achieve a breakthrough in thorium processing and having a nuclear bomb, 2 terrible things happened. On 11th of January 1966, when Shastri ji went to the Soviet Union to have peace talks with Pakistan, just 1 day after signing the peace treaty, he is mysteriously said to have died due to a heart attack. And you know why this was mysterious? Because number one, in spite of the death of the leader of a nation, no postmortem was conducted in the USSR. The postmortem conducted in India was inconclusive, and some reports suggest that his body had turned blue and there were cut marks on his abdomen which raised serious suspicions of poisoning. And just as India was trying to cope up with the death of Shastri ji, just 13 days later, on 24th of January 1966, Homi Bhabha is said to have died in a plane crash in Switzerland.
Dr. Homi Jahangir Bhabha, father of India's atomic energy program.
होमी भाभा की मौत साजिश थी या हादसा?
Untimely death.
ये विमान दुर्घटना एक अंतर्राष्ट्रीय साजिश थी.
He dreamt of creating a nuclear bomb for India.
And again, this was also mysterious because the investigation was left incomplete. This is how Homi Bhabha and his dream of India becoming a nuclear superpower and an energy independent country became a distant dream again. And you know what happened after Homi Bhabha's death? Look at this. In 1968, after China, UK, France, US and Soviet Union, all these powerful nations conducted their nuclear tests, they made everyone sign something called the Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Oh, yeah.
It was 23 years after the US dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, 6 years after the Cuban Missile Crisis. 5 nuclear-armed nations signed a deal in 1968 that brought the world back from the brink of a potentially catastrophic war. The US, Russia, UK, France and China undertook in good faith to give up their nuclear weapons. The rest of the world pledged not to acquire them.
And this treaty essentially meant that no other country could conduct nuclear tests, which means China, UK, US, France and Soviet Union, these nations could have nuclear bombs, but nobody else can have it. And in spite of it being such a stupid policy, 191 countries signed it and only 3 countries did not sign it: Israel, Pakistan and India. And if you study Homi Bhabha's life and his speeches, you will realize that Homi Bhabha feared 3 things. He feared that big nations will attack us without fearing us if we do not build a nuclear bomb. He feared that if we don't build our nuclear energy resources, oil nations will paralyze our economy. And lastly, he feared that as time passes, building a nuclear bomb will become more and more difficult due to international pressure. And guess what? All 3 things happened. In 1971, when Pakistan attacked East Pakistan, it entered India's airspace, because of which India waged a war against Pakistan. During this time, the United States sent its navy to the Bay of Bengal, and the US President Richard Nixon was even about to drop a nuclear bomb on India. Yes, Nixon was about to drop a nuclear bomb on India. It was only because of the Soviets that the US didn't bomb us, because they came to protect us. So did the big nations try to mess with us like Dr. Homi thought? Absolutely yes. Then in 1973 and 1979, when the Arab-Israeli war broke out, what did the oil nations do? They spiked the oil price so much that oil prices quadrupled by 1974 and then again doubled in 1979, which again caused an energy crisis in India, caused a food crisis in India, and it paralyzed our economy just like Dr. Homi feared. And this didn't happen once or twice, it happened again in 2022 during the Russia-Ukraine war, and it will happen again due to the Israel-Iran war. And even today, just like we were dependent on oil back then, today we are dependent on China for solar cells, we are dependent on China for our EV cells, and most importantly, we are dependent on the Middle East for oil. So did our dependence on other countries paralyze our economy? Absolutely yes. And lastly, Homi Baba also feared that as time passes, the international pressure will only make it more and more difficult to conduct a nuclear test. Did it happen? Well, look at this. When our Prime Minister Indira Gandhi approved the nuclear test, by 1974, India conducted its first nuclear test called Smiling Buddha. This was not a weapons-grade test, but a peaceful nuclear explosion, which is why it was called Smiling Buddha. But you know what happened? The international societies of the West cut our access to critical nuclear technology, they cut our access to uranium, and the scientists from US and Canada stopped working with India. Then under Vajpayee ji, in May 1998, which is 32 years after Homi Baba's death, India made history by conducting a series of 5 nuclear tests known as Pokhran 2.
Today, at 15:45 hours, India conducted 3 underground nuclear tests in the Pokhran range.
11 मई 1998, भारत के पश्चिमी छोर पर राजस्थान के पोखरण में परमाणु परीक्षण किया.
And while we were proudly celebrating science and security, what did the US do? They imposed economic sanctions and tried to cripple our economy again.
Just last week, India conducted a series of nuclear explosive tests, reminding us that technology is not always a force for good. India's action threatens the stability of Asia and challenges the firm international consensus to stop all nuclear testing.
So did the international pressure on us keep on increasing with time, just like Dr. Homi feared? Absolutely yes. And even today, after 58 years of Homi Baba's death, we are yet to solve the second problem for India, which is energy dependence. We are still dependent on the Middle East, and we still don't use nuclear energy for our energy production as much as we should. So this begs the question, what the hell are we doing about the thorium reserves, and why are we not using it? Well, if you remember, Dr. Homi Baba had a 3-step process. And you know what? We are still left to complete the 3-step process. And out of these 3 steps, for the first step, India has 24 operable reactors. For stage 2, our first fast breeding reactor was just completed this year. But for the third stage, we still do not have a thorium reactor at all. And you know which country has it? It is none other than China. And China is the only country that has this tech, and it is yet to test it. This is the reason why we are so far behind in our nuclear energy that only 3% of our energy comes from nuclear. So what are we doing to fix it? I don't know. But there are 3 lessons that we need to learn from the iconic story of Homi Baba. Lesson number 1, if any country is on the verge of a breakthrough, the West will paralyze them one way or the other. Lesson number 2, international politics is designed to favor the powerful and not the rising powers. So India needs to be very careful when it makes friends with other countries. Because in geopolitics, there are no friends, only benefits and rivals. And lastly, India needs to equip itself with nuclear just like Homi sir envisioned. And we need to push our government to make sure that we bring his vision to life. Because as once a great man said, a nation is not merely defined by the lines on a map, but by the vigor of its energy, the robustness of its economy, and the strength of its defense. This was the iconic story of Homi Baba and his vision for India. And I just hope you learned something valuable from this case study. That's all from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button in order to make YouTube Baba happy. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Well, that is a lot of
information.
A lot of information. I will link his this video into the description if you want to go and to watch it there and to see any of his other videos. please do. I really like how he presents his information, and it's good.
And you learn things.
And you learn things in what seems like a fairly non-biased way. I can say, I just saw today a video on what is supposed to be a green plant, electricity plant in Delhi that burns garbage, and it's been running for over, I think, at least more than 10 years, and it's supposed to be a green facility, and it's not green. It's anything but green. And although it produces electricity for the city, it also produces a huge amount of waste, and that too, this waste or ash is highly toxic and dangerous, and they're dumping it near playgrounds, and it's just awful. And to know that we are so close to having a better option like nuclear energy, and that, we actually have it, but for whatever reason, we're not interested or vested as a country to grow it and to utilize it. I question why. Like, why are we not growing nuclear energy? It can be scary. Like, we saw what happened in Japan with that reactor breakdown or meltdown. But I think India can do it in the right way, and they really need to. This country needs to reduce its reliance off of certain forms of energy like oil, although I think India has good ties with Russia and is not necessarily susceptible to a crippling economy situation with the Middle East anymore.
No, but that's still dependent on
somebody else, right? We need to reduce that, and if we have the means, then why are we not doing it? Yeah, I'm just sort of, I don't know. Like, I can understand. I agree with the fact that India did not sign that non-proliferation contract. I think the West in general, and I am American, but I see it. I see how we want to have the best, but we don't want everyone else to be able to have that opportunity.
No, and it's not just. I think it's not a problem of having electricity or letting people having electricity. Is that once you have the electricity, you also have the means to make the bomb.
Yeah,
and that's what they don't want. They don't want to be threatened by anybody else.
But I think we have the ability. We have the electricity. We do have, I think, nuclear plants.
Yeah.
So, I think we have the ability to grow it without, growing the war part of it or the weapon part. But I think either way, India has the right to grow either program in the way that they want.
I didn't know that you could make it with something else than uranium.
Yeah, like this thuranium or like it's interesting how we didn't even know that. Did you know that? I don't know. Yeah, and that China has it. Why, and we have such a huge supply of it. Why are we not investing in the?
They probably have a huge
science
supply
in
of
that.
it too.
Yeah, China probably does as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it is a shame that India hasn't explored the power aspect of it as much. I get, the weapons, yes and no. Like I think India has its right to defend itself in the way that it wants to and needs to. Its sovereign right to do so. I hope they would never use a nuclear option, but I think that they have the right to have it just as any other country does. And I think that the power aspect, it definitely needs to be explored more. We definitely should have nuclear power plants. It's clean, it's efficient, it's worthy of our investment and our time to build that system here. So Yeah, I mean, it was just a really interesting video. So thank you, Ganesh Prasad. Thank you, Think School, for helping us think. And if you have something you'd like to see, please share it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. As always, oh, if you haven't already, give me your like and give me your subscribe. Right?
Yeah.
Right. As always.
That button.
Click that button. Just, if you already have done it, click it again. No, don't. Click like. All right. As always, we love you and bye-bye.